We don't really talk about iOS much here on the channel, but damn, I have to say iOS 26, well, looks honestly pretty trash compared to what we've seen of Android 16 QPR1 for a number of reasons, but yeah, let's get into why. Before then though, if you want lots of nice comparison content in the coming months, then slap that subscribe button to be part of the team. I'd really love to have you join and get more content just like this. So Apple's taken iOS 26 design, it's called Liquid Glass. It's a strange revision of what I'd consider Windows Vista era Aero design, whereas Material 3 Expressive, it definitely borrows a little of the glassy style, but efforts have been made to at least frost or tone down some of those clear elements that we associate with glass, see-through elements that is. Google hasn't changed every single area of Android 16 QPR1. Instead, I think the changes are a bit more evolutionary, and while there are some minor similarities, there are definitely some similarities here, it's like Apple has decided to, or at least in terms of accessibility, it doesn't matter anymore, and that isn't going to be a priority for them moving forward. Particularly, you can see this with the quick settings panel on both of these devices. They are obvious areas of divergence and obvious areas of change within both versions of their respective OS. Functionally, the two sections, I don't think they're a million miles away, especially now, as lots of things have been changed. You can obviously resize certain areas, all that kind of stuff. I think visually though, it's a whole different story. By default in iOS 26, this entire quick panel is clear, or mostly clear. It's see-through for the most part. If you have a light background wallpaper, the lack of contrast really starts to make those tiles and toggles look, I'm going to put it politely here, pretty horrendous. With a bright light or even white wallpaper, I think good luck trying to see what you're doing. That's not great for accessibility. One of the few saving graces though is that there is a setting in iOS 26, not that many of you out there are going to use this because you're Android users, called Reduce Transparency. This added accessibility setting shouldn't really be required to get a palatable experience, and I don't know what they were thinking by doing this. I'm sure this will change in upcoming beta programs and especially as it progresses, but yeah, I don't think, at least in terms of the initial release of iOS 26, Apple kind of has put their attention to detail, their incredible attention to detail in the wrong areas. It definitely feels like that from the very, very get-go, and it's something that has struck me straight away as someone who delves into all versions of Android, into those intricate little details that most people don't even care about. To me, I have to say, Liquid Glass, whatever the design language is going to be called moving forward, it just screams change for the sake of change, whereas what Google have done with Android 16 QPR1, I think it addresses many complaints we've had with the OS over the past few years, particularly in this quick settings panel, as it improves utility by allowing more quick toggles to be added. And for all intents and purposes, I will say both these sections still work the same, but yeah, one is definitely better or infinitely better than the other. All of this does also apply to lock screen as well. The glassy style is toned down a little on iOS, with more frosted panes for you to see those notifications, but the same problems persist with this version of iOS versus the Android 16 layout. Too much transparency, while it does seem like it might be good at first glance, just doesn't really help anyone when using the phone. As for the quality of life changes, well, we're Android fans first and foremost over here, so for us, it's pretty funny to see how Apple adds things years after they've existed in the mobile lexicon and in the wider mobile space. It's funny to see that for the first time ever, iOS 26 will add estimated charging times to iPhones, and to me, it's pretty mind-boggling that this hasn't ever been a thing before. Something we sort of take for granted on almost every Android phone, going back almost a decade at this stage. DeX as well, it's nothing new, but it is limited to Samsung phones. Android 16 QPR1 is going to offer its own take on the portable desktop mode using your phone as the base. Apple isn't ever likely to dilute their juicy iPad market by providing anything similar for iPhones, but iOS does still offer basic screen mirroring, something that Android added a little while ago, or at least the base version of Android that you'll usually see on Pixel phones. It's fine, but again, it won't match that proper utility or the proper desktop utility of a dedicated desktop mode that will kick in when your phone is plugged into an external display. Really like the fact that Google is taking this a little bit more seriously with Android 16 QPR1, and we hope to see it progress as time progresses, that is. We know that AI is going to play an undoubtedly massive part in all of our tech futures, and Gemini itself will be bigger within Android than Siri will ever be able to be capable of on iPhone. So after that iOS 18, well, let's say bungled launch, lots of AI features were announced, it's shocking to see Apple at least scale back quite so drastically or tone down its marketing approach to the features powered by AI here in iOS 26. The company's decided to look over the fence and nab a few things like circle to search, or their own take on that is coming soon, but for me it's finicky, it requires you to take a screenshot and then access a button within the screenshot panel to start asking questions or work out what's on screen. not only is that unintuitive, it isn't even working in most cases. I can't seem to get it working here in the UK, where I'm based. So yeah, you'll have to take my word for it. I don't think this is a very good feature in terms of how they've implemented it, but it is nice to see there is an alternative option on iOS. Other Android features are coming to iOS 26, including core screening and Hold For Me, all their own versions of those. We're not gatekeeping those. I think it's nice for everyone to have them. Spam detection is an absolute must for anyone in the US where SMS spam is rife, and that's now available in the Messages app on Apple phones. Genmoji and Image Playground are just, well, let's be completely honest, cheap knockoffs of the excellent Emoji Kitchen, while Pixel Studio sticker generation has been around since it was added to the Pixel 9 series last year. So yeah, Apple is definitely looking over the fence and seeing what Google are doing, at least from where I'm stood. We do know that Android 16 QPR1 doesn't add anything drastic to Gemini or AI features, mostly because Gemini is practically decoupled from OS updates, unlike they are on iOS. So we get new features semi-regularly without needing full Android releases, which I really do like. I think it's great as your phone evolves, as you're using it. It's a blessing and a curse because Google has less to shout about when Android updates arrive, but it does mean there is faster rates of progression, and it shows when Astra-powered functions and features are definitely coming thick and fast to Android. I/O showcased future phone control with Gemini, and while it was a demo, it looks like it'll be able to do more than anything else we've seen before, and yeah, I don't think iOS is going to be able to compete with that for a long time to come. Credit where it's due though, Apple is learning how to tame its over-reliance on the settings menu, a complaint I've had for probably about a decade at this point in time. Some AI improves the search functionality, and it even steals a little bit of the M3 button design. I noticed this one straight away. As noted earlier in this video, whether intentional or not, it certainly feels like Google may have influenced Apple's design choices more than the company will probably openly admit this time around. As for customization, we know Android will always have the edge in overall customization controls versus iOS. That said, there are a few areas that I do think the iPhone has an undoubted edge, and most importantly and most prominently, that's lock screen and those customization and theming controls that you have on those iPhone devices. I think it needs a lot more work on Android, that's all I'm trying to say. On Apple phones, there are some truly stunning options like parallax, or more so parallax 3D wallpapers, I think I'd call them. There's better integration with lock screen clocks, and although widgets are simple, they add that extra at-a-glance utility that we're missing on a lot of Android phones at this point in time. Yeah, we technically get 14 lock screen clocks to choose from in Android 16 QPR1, but I will say they're less fluid and marginally less cohesive with your wallpaper, unless you do make that design choice ahead of time yourself and try and integrate it that way. I think due to flexible layouts, you still get more home screen options on Android. The biggest change is live effects though. This allows you to take photos from your library and add extra effects to them, like shape cutouts, weather, or even their own take on 3D or basic 3D motion. I will say it's not perfect, and dare we say it, a little gimmicky at times, but you still have that option that, yeah, it's missing on iOS. To me, it's almost funny that both Android 16 QPR1 and iOS 26 though still suffer from one customization control foible. They have similar problems with their own takes on themed icons, that is basically meaning that not all applications will play nicely with that system-wide forced theming. And yeah, I have to say, iOS does offer more than just a toggle to enable this. You can choose various styles, and although the clear icons, which is part of that glass overview or glass redesign that they're trying to make, definitely gives me 2011 era glass cat theming vibes. If you're a Cydia user, you'll know what I'm talking about. At least you do have some options right out of the box. This does tank performance in the current iOS beta for what it's worth, so yeah, if you are an iOS user looking at this, play nicely with that or be with a side of caution. Maybe I think we should get more options like this on Android, but with more attention paid to the strength of material hue and dynamic colour, I think, yeah, Google can do a lot better than what Apple are doing with this version of iOS. It's been really surprising how similar the camera experiences have become though with this update on Pixel and iPhone. Apple, they've been naturally invested in reachability as their phones have increased in size, so whether unintentional or not, their layouts have converged a little bit. There are two tabs to now switch between both photo and video modes. You'll see that on both devices, but you can slide between the various deeper modes and adjust based on the scenario you find yourself in. Being biased for a second, I will say the Google camera application may not be the most feature rich, but I do think it is really well laid out, easy to understand, and it doesn't detract away from taking photos or recording video once you've opened it. On iOS, it's better than it was, but it isn't immediately clear in the same way. It's not immediately obvious to me that a double tap of each mode can bring up deeper controls and deeper options, I do think they've tried to make it minimal for the sake of being minimal, but at least when you're using video modes, frame rate controls are now displayed with toggles to change on the fly, and it's more obvious that you can do that, as it was something they added in an older version of iOS. So when we start to wrap up this entire thing and this entire comparison, we know that both software versions are in preview right now. The thing is, we know Android and iOS steal from each other all the time, and Android we basically see brands like Xiaomi, Oppo, and even Samsung try to make their own, let's just call them knockoff versions of iOS options and features. This year though, I really hope that that doesn't happen, especially from a visual standpoint, as I do think Android is leading the pack in terms of how the visuals have, well, let's say, evolved over the past couple of years. I know we're mostly Android guys here, so you expected me to say that, but I do like seeing how things go down on other OSs, because I think it's good to see what's going on elsewhere and see where they're making mistakes, where they're making progress, and ultimately understand where Android should be at this point in time. After all, variety is the spice of life, and if it stops Google from making a mess of their own versions of software just by comparing them, then I'm all for it. I want to ask you though, what do you reckon? Do you think Apple have bumbled or fumbled this iOS update? And do you think Google and Android specifically is going to benefit from that? Let me know down in the comment sections below. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I'll chat to you in a bit.